Hello everybody. I'll get straight into it. The fragmented thing I'm presenting this evening is a mangled and amended version of a post I wrote back in 2008. It was prompted by a challenge from a fellow blogger called Midget Wrangler, who promised to award a limited edition filthy badge to the Irish blogger who could spew out the raunchiest, dirtiest post a particular week. So I rose or lowered myself to the challenge, lashed out a steamy post on /fiction, and won myself this, which I hope I have here somewhere. There we go. Ooh. So I shall treasure it always. Just a quick explanatory note on /fiction in case anybody's rigid sense of moral propriety makes them unfamiliar with the term. /fiction, which first appeared in its contemporary form in the 1970s, was and is amateur, not-for-profit, fan-made fiction, often written by women, incidentally, and interestingly, focusing on romantic/erotic relationships between same-sex fictional characters. That's it. So the original and most important of these pairings being Star Trek's Jim Kirk and Mr. Spock. And to set the mood, I've got a tasteful fan-produced slide for them to show you, which should be coming up here. Now, there they are, relaxing and luxuriating in a nice bubble bath in front of a gorgeous backdrop of airbrushed gas clouds, stars and swirling nebulae. And by the way, if you're thinking this represents a twisted and perverted and wholly reimagined version of the Kirk-Spock dynamic, then you've obviously never seen the show and subsequent films. Because /fiction writers and artists weren't inventing subtexts, they were accurately representing the text. It's all there. And here's another. Okay, and this one shows them both manacled and topless in a prison cell, having just been brutally whipped by Nazis. And amazingly enough, this is actually real. This is in Photoshop. This really happened. Now, Star Trek creator Gene Roddenberry may have intended the relationship to epitomise some kind of 23rd century platonic ideal of male love, and it's certainly moving on that level. But in giving Spock so much Vulcan restraint and stiff upper lippiness, he perhaps accidentally created a sort of pulsating costume drama style vibe. As in most costume dramas, unarticulated passions heave and seize just below the surface, held just about in check by Spock's Vulcan cool and their mutual professional obligations. This is, after all, a workplace romance. Unlike most costume dramas, one half of the couple, namely Spock, suffers from the Vulcan condition of pon farr, which means he has to mate once every 7 years or else he'll die. Talk about pressure. So even if they never actually shared a sensual cosmic bath together, on screen at least, every loaded look and potent touch and awkward, pregnant with meaning silence suggested that they both definitely considered it. Anyway, where once such tales were distributed through hand-stapled and crudely photocopied fanzines, they've now unsurprisingly found a perfect and sympathetic home on the internet, expanding and exploding online to include not just / tales of same-sex encounters, but heterosexual, bisexual, pansexual, and somewhat alarmingly interspecies ones as well. Now, not all fictional universes are equally represented. Over on the indispensable adultfanfiction.net, for example, the clear market leaders with thousands of tales devoted to each of them are Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Lord of the Rings, and slightly upsettingly, Harry Potter. Now, the convention is for each story to synopsize itself through use of codes indicating the relevant genders involved and themes explored. And here's one perplexing and mildly terrifying example of said codes taken from a Buffy story called My Own Demons. Now, there'll be a few that even the most chaste of you will recognise there. Anal, oral, trans, bond, and other sort of catch-all term there. But unless you're a particularly open-minded crowd, I wager that the bulk are unknown and possibly unknowable. I'm not sure a man or a woman or indeed other was ever meant to know the meaning of HJ or AU/AR or UST, WAF, WIP and URI. It's like trying to fathom a mind-boggling complex equation cataloguing the inner workings of outre, human passions and sexual depravities. I think if you stare at it long enough, you might just go mad. Go down through the code-heavy lists on adultfanfiction.net and you'll soon find yourself venturing into fringe and niche waters. Who would have thought, for example, that black books could produce 10 texts, or the greatest American hero, for the oldies out there, would warrant 7, or the Jurassic Park might spawn 11. One of which, by noted author Big Hard Wang, tells the alarming tale of how this quote, professor dude who gets eaten in a bathroom finds a really pretty dinosaur before he gets eaten, end quote. Anyway. Then there's Dawn of the Dead 6 pieces, with one featuring the immortal line, Quote, the zombie squeezed his balls between his gripping fingers, particular favourite of mine. Captain Scarlet's one, wherein Captain Scarlet touchingly admits to his beloved Captain Blue, I may be indestructible, but my heart isn't. A lone Goonies story, I didn't dare look at that one. And 2 on Schindler's List. Keep probing, exploring, and still weirder treats make themselves known, serving the deranged mechanophile or obsessive Top Gear follower who foams at the mouth at the thought of polished chrome and thrusting pistons is a surprisingly popular Transformers category, which contains, to my human eyes at least, some of the least erotically charged prose ever dreamt up by the human imagination. And here's a few choice examples. Quote, the port was still dry, indicating that he wasn't aroused. This made it a difficult situation since inserting his transfer into an unaroused mech would not be pleasurable for either one of them. Quote, slowly Prime began to move his hip servos, arching up against Soundwave. His aft ports became slicker. Further down the rabbit hole of bonkersness are 2 neglected categories, serving and servicing the proclivities of I'm not sure who or what exactly, exploring in unflinching, furry detail the erotic adventures of Care Bears and My Little Ponies. First up is a delightful Belle of the Ball Until Dawn Comes, the lone tale in the My Little Pony archive. Although one My Little Pony story is still one more My Little Pony story than you might expect to find. Here we're invited to experience with slack-jawed faces an account of a night of passion between Starcatcher and Twinkle Twirl. And there they are. That's Twinkle Twirl on the left and the rearing, magnificent Starcatcher on the right. So after an enchanting ball in magical Ponyland, they tenderly get down to business. Quote, Starcatcher, Twinkle Twirl whispered, shaking a little from the newness of things. She was aware that he had taken off her skirt and she was a little shy. End quote. Now, I freely admit I'm no My Little Pony expert, but I wasn't aware that they wore skirts. I guess without something to remove, there's less of an erotic frisson. As my father always says, if you want to eroticize animals, put clothes on them. Because naked animals are simply animals. You'd want to fuck a duck unless it had a pair of pants you could whip off. Back to the story, quote, close your eyes, it'll be more pleasant that way. Relax and breathe deeply of the cool night air, Starcatcher instructed Twinkle Twirl as she complied. He began to massage her neck muscles softly, allowing her to loosen up as he went along. How does it feel, he queried. Heavenly, Twinkle almost purred, except that ponies don't purr. End quote. Now, you have to give the author props for self-correction there. Instead of anticipating objections about the outrageousness of the material, he or she imagines incredulous readers saying, look, we can suspend our disbelief and buy all that stuff about magical equine fucking in a colourful fairyland, but purring ponies, come on, that's ludicrous. Anyway, moving on to the climax. Quote, Starcatcher, she breathed. Harder, she panted in a breathy, equine sort of way, shivering. He thrust into her harder, still, gasping as he did, in and out, back and forth, faster and faster. Oh, Twinkle, he called out heavily. Twinkle Twirl, you're wonderful. I should point out that you're wonderful is followed by no fewer than 5 exclamation marks. So I fear my drab delivery isn't going to convey Starcatcher's enthusiasm. I'd just like to finish, it's pretty quick, with Morning Reflections, which is a surprisingly affecting and sensitive Care Bear tale told by a writer called Mana Angel. And here's the relevant couple. Just let you process that. That's our proud heart cat there on the left, and the angst-ridden and sexually repressed Braveheart Lion on the right. Here's a quote. Braveheart Lion knew about sex, of course, but he hadn't heard about it from his cubhood guardians True Heart and Noble Heart. I'm not sure if these are there's any continuity problems with any of this. I'm not a Care Bear aficionado, so maybe somebody could tell me afterwards. He supposedly figured it was a non-issue with them being what they were. But when he was younger, he discovered by accident that when he touched a certain part of his body a certain way, good feelings resulted from it. Because of the private nature of that body part and those feelings, he had kept it to himself, but he always wondered why. Then one day he had caught himself staring at Proudheart Cat, and he'd almost had a serious social disaster when his penis began to swell. He had excused himself from tummy symbol practice. Now, I don't know what that is, but it sounds hilarious. He had excused himself from tummy symbol practice, saying he didn't feel well, and walked towards his home with his hands folded in front of him to hide his condition. How embarrassing. End quote. We meet him again a little later after a moment of painful intimacy. Quote, "Proud-hearted touched his most secret place where her paw encountered nothing but silky fur. Their genitals were always masked by their fur, and for the males, their penises were hidden in a sheath. You'd never know they were anatomically correct, but they were." End quote. Now, audience members of a certain vintage will undoubtedly remember the scandal and outrage caused by Kenner Toys' 1982 range of anatomically correct Care Bears. If you cuddle them a little, they'd chuckle and lecture you on the merits of sharing. If you cuddle them a lot, a fur-lined phallus would unsheath itself, creep out and poke you in the belly. Moving on and wrapping up, it's later still, and Braveheart Lion is shampooing his mane in the shower. Quote, "His balls drew up close to his body, and he emitted a roar as he ejaculated. He had the sense to aim for the drain as his penis spasmed and his testicles emptied themselves of his seed. He felt awful. It was a dull, hollow pain in his chest, as if he'd committed some grievous sin. His member had shrunken and retreated the safety and obscurity of its sheath. He sighed, shut off the water and dried himself off. It was late enough as it is, and he still had to eat before he left the house. He pushed his guilt away and went down to raid the fridge. It was his secret. No one would ever know." End quote. Now, Braveheart may only be a Care Bear or a Care Line or whatever with a jolly red heart adorning his chest, but that's one of the most eloquent and heart-wrenching articulations of pubescent masturbatory guilt I've ever actually read. Though I can't quite relate to the mane and the silky fur and the sheathed cock, I can readily identify with the shame and emptiness of covert feverish wanking in a shower. Not only that, but when I was 13 I regularly brought myself to orgasm by humping a Masters of the Universe beanbag while dreaming of the Cadbury's Caramel Bunny. So I retain a certain warm and fuzzy nostalgia for eroticized cartoon characters. So in conclusion, while there's not much in the way of sexy pleasure to be had from the reading of these tales, they do serve to remind us of the rich, mad, endlessly perplexing tapestry of human sexuality. On adultfanfiction.net and its sister sites, nobody's a weirdo, because everybody is. Thank you.